I've long wondered, why has the concept of zombies been so deeply rooted in the human psyche? Is it our fear of death and the mysteries that lie beyond it? Or could it be our disdain for the grotesque state of decay left in the void of life? Now, enter the second most haunting level of my dream world, the inner firmament, which is the reluctant host of the undead. Follow me as I travel the world, battling the ever-growing army of the fallen. I'm Mr. X, and welcome to my dreams. Dream number 1. I'm an actor, taking a red-eye flight to a place reminiscent of Chicago. As I look out the window, the runway is soaked with rain. There's a damp, humid feel to everything. Even inside the plane, my jacket feels slightly wet to the touch. We land safely and I make my way through the airport terminals. I rent a car and begin to travel to the venue of the comedy horror film that I have a role in. I'm looking forward to the project. It just may be my big break. The theme is supposed to be zombie survival. As I get closer to my destination, I realize that the entire city looks abandoned, maybe even ruined, with debris and dirt everywhere. There are no lights to be seen. I find myself impressed, marveling at the sheer scale of the set they built. After some time driving, I arrive to see a surprisingly small group of film crew members. As time goes on, it becomes apparent that there is not enough equipment on set, and that no one has seen the director since the first day. As I survey the area with a lingering suspicion growing in the back of my mind, I spot several cameras attached to various disheveled buildings, each with a small, dim red light. When one crew member wanders away from the site, one of the cameras pans to track her movement. It's as if we've been left alone to fend for ourselves like some kind of reality TV show. As hours pass, the cast starts getting into disputes and fighting each other over hole-up locations and scant food sources. I quickly decide to lay low and not ally myself with anyone. This situation is getting out of control. Days pass in the dream world. Days of scrounging for food and avoiding other crew members who had splintered into groups for safety and moral support. I look down an alleyway and notice a strange woman walking quickly down the street toward our so-called set. There was something off about her. She slinked about among the shadows of the alleyway. Even in the darkness that enveloped her, I could see that she looks pale and gaunt. As I examine her from a distance, perplexed, I see movement behind her. Several other dark figures shuffling, heads bobbing back and forth with a peculiar laziness. The first woman finally steps into the light, revealing the most convincing zombie makeup I've ever seen. The craftsmanship is astounding. Realistic skin drooping from her face. Exposed bone with impossibly functioning limbs. Looking at her walking with a disturbingly exposed right femur, it becomes clear to me. These are no actors. These zombies are real. We all scatter, struggling to find shelter as the small horde makes its way into our territory, fanning out. I find a tall building with a parking garage entrance, but another actor has already gotten in and closed the gate. I have to run to the other side to get in. Once I get to the door, I squeeze under a partially closed gate and into the safe space. He finds me and attacks me in a state of blind fear. I have no choice but to fight. His arms grapple with me as I regather myself. His eyes show the tightness of fear's grasp around his mind. Unfortunately for him, his strength is not enough. I'm able to pry back his arms and twist them around to his back. His head shoots left and right in a fit of panic as I take his body to the ground, pressing my knee into his back. I hold him down with all my weight as we quietly watch the long-cast silhouettes of legs shambling by the sunset light coming in through the opening under the door. My opponent seems to fall asleep under my weight as screams begin to echo off the walls of the buildings. I decide not to let up on him. It's probably better this way. Dream number 2. I'm in Afghanistan, I've been there many times before, but this time I'm stationed at the most remote outpost I've ever seen. I'm halfway down a ladder, attached to a lookout post, descending after getting relieved of my shift on watch. My eyes almost squint shut when I hear an unnatural, rabid scream tear through the night air. I climb back up the outpost ladder in a sprint. As I make the last rung, I stop cold, with the wind whistling past my eyes, blurring my vision. I survey the grounds of the post to see that it is suddenly being overrun by droves of zombies in old military uniforms. Scores of them, swarming around the concrete walls of our compound. I look down the ladder and confirm that no living soldier is within range of it. Seeing no one, I frantically disconnect it and send it tumbling to the ground, knocking over several undead running recklessly below. I'm forced to watch as many of my fellow soldiers are being overtaken by the hordes. A dreadful sight. I'm in such shock that I nearly forget that in my hands I have an M4 assault rifle. I make a vain attempt at thinning the enemy numbers. There seems to be no end to their rampage. After expending my ammunition, the monsters are beginning to climb the legs of the outpost. I shove them off with the butt of my rifle as they scramble back up with limitless, blind determination. I'm close enough to see their facial expressions, many of them with permanent scowls etched into their decomposing flesh, others with a look of pure, unbridled hunger that I hope to never know. I'm losing ground. I need to get out of the lookout post. I smash a window and jump to a nearby rooftop just in time. It's just a matter of a 15-foot drop. There, I stumble upon some fellow soldiers. From our high vantage point, we can see the way the creature's movement flowed almost according to a pattern, as if they were a single organism or a stream of blood navigating through a vascular system. The flow seems to be slowing for no apparent reason, and I have the feeling that the onslaught is nearing its end. Moments later, the zombies stop in their tracks, turn around, and begin to exit the compound. I have to know what's going on. The zombies even seem to ignore any human that stands in the way of their retreat. I descend from the rooftop and stand among them, testing my theory. They walk right past me. I can smell the pungent sting of their odor. I still haven't forgotten it. Come to think of it, the entire incident must have lasted less than 5 minutes. It felt like a lifetime. Dream number 3. I've been holed up in a high-tech bunker for more days than I can remember. We've long ago lost track of time, but sometime in the past, a mysterious cataclysm of apocalyptic proportions occurred, leaving life on this earth a shattered remnant of its former glory. Only about 20% of the human race still survives, and even that, unfortunately, depends on your definition of survival. In this world, there was once a time when aliens came from the far reaches of outer space and had grown to be moderately accepted among human populations. Though they were often discriminated against and rarely trusted, they served many functioning roles in human society and were quickly gaining grounds in the social and political atmospheres. Those were happier times. Since then, humanity has been devastated by an unknown force. The effects seem to be totally random, as if to be the act of some twisted, whimsical deity. I have my daughter Eden with me, along with a younger boy named Tak, who is not my son. He looks to be about 10 years of age, with a gaunt build, brown skin and dusty black hair. I don't like him very much, but he's the only one of the survivors in the facility brave enough to come with us. Eden is still a girl, but is skilled in combat and evasion enough for me to trust her to come out scouting with me. Every day, we leave the bunker in search of food and supplies. It's just the 3 of us, since everyone else is too afraid to leave the safety of the bunker. As we explore during the hours of daylight, we look off at the horizon and can see how the Earth's surface has been cracked and ruptured. Entire cities have fallen into enormous fissures, with fire and magma shooting high into the sky in some places. There's a vast, random patchwork of areas that have been somehow turned into bronze metal, perfectly circular spaces where people have been frozen with grimaced expressions on their faces. Eden and I have walked among these standing grave sites. They're an absolute marvel to behold, even considering the deep tragedies through which they came about. The streets are littered with dangerous anomalies. Some people have risen from the dead to wander. Others were transformed into writhing masses of insects, sea life, or worms, which coursed through the broken pathways aimlessly. Still others were transformed into totally new, ferocious species which are mindlessly hostile towards humans. Thankfully, those are only known by their legends so far. As our expedition is drawing to a close, we come across a dirty, weak young boy who seems to have been surviving in the wilds of the city on his own somehow. He's dressed in rags, a tattered white shirt draped over one shoulder, and a worn, filthy pair of briefs constitute his only clothing. The boy begins to follow us, making everyone uneasy. On our way back in from the route, I stop upon hearing an unfamiliar noise coming from the blown-out wall of a building. I make the call to backtrack and go the long way around to avoid any enemy encounters. As we back up, Eden turns her back to cover our six, while Tak and I maintain visual contact on the area where the noise came from. The strange boy just walks calmly, drifting in whichever direction we take as a group. Suddenly, a rabid humanoid creature bursts from the debris, sending boards of wood and broken bricks hurtling toward us. I instinctively raise my forearm to shield my face from the projectiles when the creature charges, throwing itself forward with its limbs trailing behind its body as if they were limp. Just in time, Tak fires a round from his pistol, causing the creature to recoil, but prompting it to readjust its focus to Eden. At that moment, I grab the unknown boy. During an instance of slowed time, I consider the fact that he looked odd somehow. I justify my split-second decision to sacrifice him by assuming that he was probably a mutant. With a strong swing of my arm, I fling his body into the path of the monster in order to save Eden. With no resistance, no expression, he was eaten. It was a simple calculation of how much I cared for him versus my daughter. After a non-stop dash for at least 2 miles, we finally arrive back at the bunker to find several residents huddled in a defunct communications unit, coming in from long-dormant radio equipment. We hear news of special teams being sent in from some unknown fragment of world government to investigate the anomalies. As my team and I are decompressing and discussing events, other dwellers of the bunker watch us from afar, quivering at the recounting of our exploits. A man dressed in chemical protection gear shows up suddenly at the main entry of our facility, claiming that he's here to measure odd light waves and radio frequencies that are now present throughout the world. He seems to know more than he lets on. I don't trust him. The leader of our bunker, a scientist, lets the chemical man inside. He and his team of mystery men rush in and immediately begin setting up equipment, scanning and cataloging everything in sight. I start to hear people protesting about being grabbed or scanned themselves, soon followed by the sounds of electronic control devices and stun guns being discharged. One by one, people are being apprehended and rounded up. As my team and I begin to calmly reach for our weapons, a hail of gunfire erupts from behind us. Sounds are muffled as I drop to my knees, slowly collapsing to the ground. As my vision fades, I see the blurred image of Tak, charging forward with his pistol, firing. I somehow get the feeling the disasters that led us to this new world may have been the result of some human meddling. I've always known the leader was weak. I've been secretly gaining support from the other survivors in order to oust him and take over as the new leader of the group. If only I'd made my move sooner, we wouldn't be here. Dream number 4. I'm on a construction project, working on a skyscraper. I have to take an elevator up at least 100 floors before getting out and climbing the outside scaffolding to get the rest of the way up to the top. I'm working near the pinnacle. It's flat and measures only about 10 yards squared. I get right to work, preparing my tools and materials before applying mortar to the partially finished maintenance structure next to an antenna. After only a few minutes of peacefully plodding away at the mundane task of cinder block stacking, I'm interrupted by the sounds of metal clanging, coming from the scaffolding hanging off of the side of the building. The noise grows progressively louder until I decide to peek my head over the side to take a look. I nearly lose my balance and avoid falling over in shock when I see the horrific sight of emaciated, gray-skinned zombies tearing their way up the ladder, snarling with their eyes fixated on me. One is merely 2 feet away from my face. In a full panic, I pull my head back and kick at the creature, sending its limp body hurtling toward the ground, its ragged, torn clothing flapping in the wind as it falls. In a slight daze, I turn to assess my options. The zombies leave me no route for escape, so I have no choice but to climb up the unfinished structure that I was previously working on. The creatures swarm the rooftop as I make my ascent, and one of them grabs my leg, its sharp nails lacerating my shin as I pull myself up. Knowing nothing about the zombies or their biology, I begin to calculate what the injury could mean. I don't know if a scratch is enough to infect me, or if I would only need to avoid being bitten. The wounds on my leg begin to ooze fluorescent yellow pus and blood, compounding my worries. Anger begins to grow in my chest as I contemplate charging into the horde with reckless abandon. Within moments, the entire rooftop is covered in the twisting, thrashing forms of those gray monsters. My heart races as I struggle to make a decision. I wonder if perhaps I'm not infected. I hope that someone may come and rescue me from this fate, but my heart sinks as I notice the colors fading away from my vision, everything becoming black and white. The one thing I know for certain is that I must never become one of them, so my eyes turn to the tiny images of the city below. I now wonder, as I let go of my foothold and prepare to let myself fall, if I close my eyes, maybe I won't be so scared. I'd like to thank my old friend Let's Read for featuring me this week. I'm still pretty new to the narration community, and he was the very first one to believe in me and give me a chance. If you enjoyed this set of dreams, I have many more on my channel, Mr. X Dreams, along with true scary stories, original creepypastas, and even a full audiobook, all written by me. I'd love to know what you think of it. Follow the link in the description box or on screen to find out more. I'm Mr. X, and may your nights be full of dreams. I've long wondered, why has the concept of zombies been so deeply rooted in the human psyche? Is it our fear of death and the mysteries that lie beyond it? Or could it be our disdain for the grotesque state of decay left in the void of life? Now, enter the second most haunting level of my dream world, the inner firmament, which is the reluctant host of the undead. Follow me as I travel the world, battling the ever-growing army of the fallen. I'm Mr. X, and welcome to my dreams. Dream number 1. I'm an actor, taking a red-eye flight to a place reminiscent of Chicago. As I look out the window, the runway is soaked with rain. There's a damp, humid feel to everything. Even inside the plane, my jacket feels slightly wet to the touch. We land safely and I make my way through the airport terminals. I rent a car and begin alone to fend for ourselves like some kind of reality TV show. As hours pass, the cast starts getting into disputes and fighting each other over hole-up locations and scant food sources. I quickly decide to lay low and not ally myself with anyone. This situation is getting out of control. Days pass in the dream world. Days of scrounging for food and avoiding other crew members who had splintered into groups for safety and moral support. I see a surprisingly small group of film crew members. As time goes on, it becomes apparent that there is not enough equipment on set and that no one has seen the director since the first day. As I survey the area with a lingering suspicion growing in the back of my mind, I spot several cameras attached to various disheveled buildings, each with a small, dim red light. When one crew member wanders away from the site, one of the cameras pans to track our movement. It's as if we've been left to travel to the venue of the comedy horror film that I have a role in. I'm looking forward to the project. It just may be my big break. The theme is supposed to be zombie survival. As I get closer to my destination, I realize that the entire city looks abandoned, maybe even ruined, with debris and dirt everywhere. There are no lights to be seen. I find myself impressed, marveling at the sheer scale of the set they built. After some time driving, I arrive to